Hi and welcome. Thanks for joining us as we take this opportunity to look at how we can utilise Office 365 on our iPads. So let's get started with today's lesson. So far in this video series, we've looked at how Office 365 works on the iPad. In this video, we're going to take a look at how Office 365 works with the iPad. So really starting to think about the utilization of the features of the iPad and how Office 365 functions perfectly well within this. So having your Office 365 environment on an iPad, but still be able to obviously have all that creativity. So as we've demonstrated before, I still have access to the world of Microsoft apps on my device. I can still do the creativity, the productivity, the collaboration through Teams. I've still got access to all of that. But having it on my iPad means I also have all the access to all of this and all of these. So I've now opened up that world of creativity for my learners. And built into that, I also have all the access to the iPad tools that enable me to maybe function a little bit easier with my students from an accessibility point of view to a productivity point of view, because there are some certain features on the iPad that really allow me to work in a more creative way. We know that we have the camera built into the device. We know that we have a microphone built into the device. We know that we can start to be productive in utilizing split screen on a device and lots of other things. So let's just take a look at what some of those things are. And why Office 365 on an iPad might be, for many people, a really, really useful way of integrating the school systems that you are set, potentially from local authorities or from your governments, but how you can then choose your hardware, such as an iPad, in order to develop the learning and teaching outcomes that your students want to do. So a couple of things to just highlight then. Let's imagine that I'm doing a project here within Pages. So I've got my Pages, I've got my Keynote, I've got my numbers. I still have access to my Word, PowerPoint and Excel. But let's go into a Pages document and let's start to think about what we can do with this. So I've created this learning journal that I use with my students. I'm going to go ahead and open it up. And I want my students to have access to this. So I simply tap on the three dots, tap on Share, and we'll see that I have access to stick it into OneNote, stick it into Teams, email it via Outlook. So that Office 365 integration into the app still allows me to use that back end as an educator, but I can utilize maybe alternative tools because that's my preferred style of working. And that's really what we want for our students. We want them to be digitally literate. We want them to understand, using the right tool at the right time and not be limited to the tools that we might specify to them in advance. Once they know the range of tools that they have access to, they can start to have that autonomy and agency and think about what is the best way to solve this problem for me. All we need to do is make sure that they have the route in order to share that work with us, and that's the workflow, and we've looked at that within our Teams videos. Now that same process works across all of the apps that you might be looking at. So if I went into Keynote now, I'd be able to do exactly the same thing in Keynote and share that Keynote slide through Teams, etc. So really, really simple the way to do that. Let's take a look at some specific things though in Word. So let's say we are creating a newsletter, and I've actually started to think about my drafting process here. So I don't necessarily want to start writing directly into the document. I want to actually create my text in a different document. Well, do you know what? That's just as easy to do. If I swipe up from the bottom of the screen, and just to reveal the doc, I can tap on any place where I might have made these notes. So let's just have a look at a couple of the options. I can get Word, tap and hold, drag it so the app becomes free under my finger, drop that to the side of the screen. I can now open up a new, let's go back, we'll open a new document here, and I can use this as my note taking. Oops, make sure I've selected the right side. This one could be my note taking. So on this side, I might do my note taking, and then I can copy the text across to the other side. That's one way to do it. I might also want to utilize Pages to do this. So I can simply drag Pages into that window and do the same process. So I can go to a blank document, and I can utilize this and do my type on here, and again copy and paste that across as I want to build my document over here. I might also want to use notes to do this, so I can jump into notes, I can start my new note, and the same thing, I can drag Word into the sidebar, go back into that document, and I can type on one side and I can design on the other side. So lots and lots of different ways that you can interact between those two. And it doesn't just end there in terms of doing word processing. I could have a PowerPoint slide on this side, and I could have a keynote over here, and I could work interchangeably between the two. Lots and lots of different ways that you can work using copy and paste, drag and drop. Just a really, really nice way to have that sort of dual screen view as I'm getting productive in my work. Also add into that, and we've seen this lots of times, I might just want to have access to some research that I'm looking at. So my newsletter here might be about 21st century classrooms, and over here I've done some searching about 21st century classrooms, and I can interchange between reading here and making notes and adding together a product over here. So lots and lots of different ways that you can interact between your Office 365 and a back-end system, but the iPad might make it easier for you to be more productive as part of your workflow. The other thing to highlight is the access you have to all of your files. Now, we've shown you that we have access to our OneDrive here as an app, but the other thing that you might not be aware of, on an iPad you actually have access to files, and this isn't just my iCloud drive. As you'll see, I have access to any cloud-based storage, and it will allow me to access all of that on my device. So if I tap on OneDrive here, it has access to my OneDrive files. I can go into those files, I can see all of those files that I've created. I can also see all of the things that I've created on my iPad, which might be saved in my iCloud drive, and any other drives that you might have need access to. Now, if I type a search in, you'll see that it searches absolutely everything. It doesn't just search my cloud, it searches on everything on my device. So I'm not restricted in that sense to having to stick to one storage place, one way of keeping all of that work together. Files actually keeps everything in one place as if it's on my computer, and it just searches the whole device. So again, just another kind of benefit, I suppose, of working on the hardware that allows me to work a certain way but still have access to lots of those other things. The final thing to say is really we want students to be as creative as possible, and we want to give them access to a range of tools. Often I get asked the question around, we want our students to have that breadth of information. What if they go to a workplace when they're older and it's all Office? Or what if they go to a workplace when they're older and it's all Google? If we ask them to work on an iPad now, they're not going to have the skills to be able to do those things. Well, hopefully in these videos that we've shared with you, you can see that actually we are probably giving them that broader range in working in this way. As you can see here, I have access to the Apple tools, I have access to the Google tools, and I have access to the Microsoft tools. The tool itself that I'm working on is my access point that allows me to work in a creative way, because I can have the keyboard, but I can also take it remotely, and I can be remotely working with this. I can be mobile. So although with a keyboard and a device that has the keyboard attached to it, it may be a mobile device because I can wander around with it, I can't actually work on it whilst I'm wandering around without balancing things. With the iPad, I suppose what I get is a little bit more freedom to wander around, to move around, and to start to think about how I can utilize some of those tools in that mobile world that we might be living in. So hopefully these videos have highlighted that yes, Office 365 works perfectly well on an iPad, but if you give them the iPad, what else can they also achieve and still be able to share that through your workflow?